Welcome to Superhero Pow. I'm your host nerd, Tom Fremgen. You know, as I like to do, I was checking out old comic books and saw something that I thought was really interesting. Oh man, here we go. Tom is going to show us something lame. Hey, if you don't like weird little stuff like this, you probably shouldn't be clicking on comic book videos. Anyway, I was checking out comic books Marvel published in 1971, basically right after Jack Kirby left them. And what was interesting to me was how few there were. Now, before you jump ahead, no, this isn't because Marvel was still living under DC's thumb. Back in the 1950s, DC and Marvel were using the same distributor, Independence News, which also happened to own DC. So they didn't let Marvel publish all the books they may have wanted to. But that ended in 1968. So by 1971, Marvel could print as many comic books as they wanted. And despite the loss of Jack Kirby, they were still the growing powerhouse in the industry. Within a few more years, they would become the biggest company and start out selling DC. So now, guess, how many titles do you think Marvel was publishing in the early 1971? Well, it was about 21 to 25. Depending on all the bi-monthly issues and quarterly issues, it's kind of hard to get a direct count. And I'm far too lazy to count up every single issue they printed in 1971 and divide it all by 12. But anyway, 21 to 25. Not bad. DC was only doing about 30 plus issues a month themselves. But now here's the interesting thing about those 21 or so titles. How many of those books do you think were reprints? Would you believe 8 of them? Like a third of Marvel's output was reprints. Most of it was the non-superhero stuff. In fact, nearly all of Marvel's non-superhero books were reprint books. Rawhide Kid, Monsters on the Prowl, Our Love Story, stuff like that. The only non-superhero titles that were still getting new stories were Mindy the Model, which was still being written by Stan Lee, and Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos. For comparison, DC had like 15 non-superhero titles, and they all had new material, no reprints. But it wasn't just the non-superhero titles that were full of reprints. Marvel had some superhero titles as well that were just reprints, like Marvel's Greatest Comics, which was nothing but reprints of the Fantastic Four, Marvel Tales, which was reprints of Spider-Man, and the shocker of them all, X-Men, was nothing but reprints at this time. From like issue number 67 to issue 93, the X-Men was just a reprint book. That all changed with the all-new, all-different, giant-size X-Men reboot. So Marvel was only making like 13 new titles every month. Everything else was a reprint. That just seems crazy to me. Meanwhile, DC was basically knocking out like 30 new titles every month. And because I love lists, this is basically what Marvel was pumping out in 1971. The Amazing Spider-Man, The Avengers, Captain America, Conan, Daredevil, Fantastic Four, The Hulk, Iron Man, Submariner, and Thor. On a non-monthly basis, they also had Astonishing Tales, which featured Kazar and Doctor Doom, and Amazing Adventures, which featured the Inhumans and Black Widow. It's a far cry from today, as Marvel knocks out close to 80 titles a month, not to mention about 160 variant covers. And I think it's fun to point out that all these comics were only 15 cents. You could buy all the Marvel superhero books in a month for $1.50. You tried to do that today, that would be like 65 titles at like, let's say, $3.99 an issue. That's $259. If you wanted to buy just those core 12 superhero issues, that would be about $47. I also think it's fun to point out that using the rate of inflation, something that cost 15 cents in 1971 should cost about $1.20 today. So we should, quote unquote, only be paying about $14 for those 12 issues. But here we are, it's $47. No wonder the kids aren't buying comic books anymore. Okay, enough about money. We're talking about how Marvel Comics barely made any comic books back in the 70s. I almost wish it was still like that. And like $12 a week, I could buy everything. Sweet. Anyway, what do you think? Were you as surprised as me to learn that Marvel only did 12 new comic books a month? Oh, and for extra fun, I was checking out all the cover artists of those issues. Seems like John Buscema, I suppose not surprisingly, drew most of them. Though if you added in all like the non-superhero covers as well, Marie Severance was kind of right there with him. Then John Romita, now known as Senior, would do about 2 covers a month. Sal Buscema and of course Herb Trimpe would do the Hulk. Outside of the superheroes, there was Dick Ayers who would do Sergeant Fury, and Barry Windsor Smith, of course, was doing the Conan covers. Talk about a simpler time. Anyway, thanks for spending time with me. And if you could be so kind to like, subscribe, and notify, I promise to keep boring you with more stuff about comics and animation. Until then, take care of yourself.